Tawang is a very sensitive issue. It is here where one of the Dalai Lamas uh, found incarnation. It is very deeply linked to Tibet. And since China has occupied Tibet, they are laying claim on Tawang. In 1962, they captured Tawang but retreated. Earlier on, they were willing to have a settlement on the basis of India recognizing the road they had built in like Saichin, as against Chinese acceptance of the McMahon line. Subsequently, as China has become militarily stronger, they changed their position. So now they say that if there is a border settlement, India will have to make meaningful concessions in the east, which actually means ceding Tawang to China. And this came out in the open when Dai Bingo, who was the special representative of the Chinese government when the special representative mechanism was set up, and the counterpart was Brajesh Mishra, just after retirement, when he was asked about the possibility of a border settlement with India, he said that the minimum that India would have to do would be to cede Tawang to China. It's not going to happen. And of course, there's a big weakness in Chinese position. If they were so sure about their legal claim on Taiwan, so in 1962, why did they evacuate Taiwan and went back across their line of actual control? It's not as if in Ladakh they didn't go back to their earlier positions. Not only they kept the Saichin area under their control, in fact, they extended their control. They went beyond their own claim line prior to 1959. And today, what they're occupying in Ladakh is much larger area than was originally claimed by China. So there's a basic weakness in Chinese position. But nevertheless, there are various dimensions in China's attitude and thinking towards India. We are the only country in Asia that can stand up to China, that can compete with China, and that can ensure that China does not become a hegemon in Asia. No other country has the size and the capacity to do so. Japan is a big economic power, but not a significant political power. And in any case, they are under the defense umbrella of the United States. So they have no independence of action with regard to China. Similarly, South Korea is a small country. All the other countries in Asia are very small. So China has this vision of becoming the most preeminent power in the world by 2050, either equal to the United States or even surpassing the United States. The hurdle to their ambition and an eventual bipolarity, if you like, is a country like India. Therefore, they have to keep putting India on the defensive. And periodically, they have incursions across our border to keep us off balance, to demonstrate that China has the upper hand and they can press India when they want, and force India to spend much more money on defense at the cost of its economic development, and also demonstrate to Asia that China is the biggest power in Asia to whom all other countries should defer, because the Chinese have this very hierarchical thinking where they are at the top of the pyramid and others have to bow before them. This is part of Chinese culture. So this incident at Tawang should be seen in this broader light. that China is indirectly asserting its claim on parts of Arunachal Pradesh, especially Tawang. And I believe that in terms of the terrain of the area where this conflict is going on, is a particular height at 17,000 feet or whatever, from where you have a 40 or 50 kilometer view of the terrain below up to Tawang. So it is critical in terms of the military dimension, which is why India is resisting and has also repulsed in the past more than once the attempt by Chinese to gain control of these heights. So the relatively, how should I say, reassuring thing is that while there has been a clash and there have been injuries on both sides, no actual firing incident has taken place. And to that extent, the border agreements that we have where our people on the frontier will not be carrying rifles or other form of lethal equipment so as to avoid the potential of a deadly military clash. But then, as you know, the Chinese have resorted to clubs with spikes and rods and other things, which have caused injuries and deaths. In Galwan, for instance, and here also, there have been injuries on both sides. But on the whole, the situation has remained relatively contained and could have gone out of hand. But China is risking this escalation. The other thing that they're trying to do is to stretch our defensive sources, having bottled 50,000 troops at these huge heights in Ladakh. And this is the third winter that our forces would be staying on at these heights. They are now created incidents in the east so that our attention gets diverted there. So we have to move forces there, and we have to, be prepared for any eventuality. And it's very important to note that at the moment, the passes in Arunachal Pradesh are not manned by either side. They are not in control of either side. So if the Chinese decide to gain control of these passes, it will be a big challenge for us, and we would have then to take counteraction. Which means that they have the initiative. They can create a situation anywhere along the line of actual control or the McMahon line in the east, especially in areas which have been disputed. There are a few pockets of disagreement. Whether China decides to up the ante in Arunachal Pradesh remains to be seen. China, to my mind, has to be careful in what they do because unless, of course, there's a complete all-out war where everything that we have in our respective arsenals is used, and there is then a risk of use of nuclear weapons, by these limited actions on the border, they're not going to gain anything. In fact, to my mind, they will lose a lot of prestige. I mean, if they occupy a few kilometers here and there, it's not territory that is important. China is the third largest country in the world. India is the seventh largest country in the world. Territory per se is not important. It is more a question of trying to impose their will on India without fighting. But even if they gain 10, 15 kilometers, it's not going to change radically anything. And there'll be losses on both sides. And China is very, very sensitive about losses. Even in the Galwan, till today, they have admitted that they only lost 4, whereas our very considered view is that it was anything between 39 to 42. And this is also relatively the same figure that the Americans have come to. And I'm saying this because I had a talk with our highest military brass privately, and it was explained to me why they have reached and how they have reached this figure of anything between 39 to 45 or so. But the Chinese do not want to make it public that they have had heavy casualties. But if there is a large military operation, there will be very heavy casualties. So is China prepared to divulge to its public opinion the losses in human lives that it would incur? The reason for this is that one of the reasons for this is that they have a one China policy. So if the only child gets killed, it means that the entire family, the lineage is destroyed. So they have a domestic problem in terms of how to sell to the public the loss of human life of this kind. And for this reason,